Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about the danger of walking in disobedience and in sin, and how it ultimately leads to destruction. And we're going to be reading from Judges 13 all the way down to 16. We're going to be going like bits and pieces into like the scripture just to give you an overall picture, but if you could just take the time and just read Judges 13 to 16, the story will all come together. Um, so, we're going to be talking about Samson and how he was to be dedicated to God from the beginning. He was supposed to be chosen, he was supposed to be set apart. But later on, we learned that Samson disobedience and sin led to his destruction. Um, it tells us in Judges 13, it reads that the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman who was Samson's mother and told her, although you are unable to conceive and have children, you will conceive and give birth to a son. Now, please be careful to not drink wine or beer or eat anything unclean, for indeed you will conceive and give birth to a son, and you must never cut his hair, because the boy will be a Nazarite to God from birth. And a Nazarite is someone who takes a special vow and a special dedication to God. And for Samson, when the angel of the Lord had appeared to his mother, the instruction that was given to her was that he cannot cut his hair, he cannot eat anything that was unclean, he could not um, drink any wine or beer. And after that, the Bible tells us that um, and that he will be a Nazarite from birth. He will begin to save the Israelites from the power of the Philistines. And one of the most famous story of the Philistines are Goliath and David, and we see how Goliath taunted the Israelites, literally was bullying them, and they mocked them. And because they had this giant who oversee and overpowered every single one of them, but God in his ultimate power later on used David. But it just comes to show how um, the Philistines was so daring. They were so wicked. They wanted to literally destroy the Israelites. And God wanted to use Samson to show his mighty hand so that the Israelites would see the hand of God being upon Samson and believe that God is with them. God is indeed with them. But the Bible begins to tell us how later on Samson started breaking those vows, those dedication. And it goes on and it tells us later on in 14 after Samson grew up, and it said that Samson went down to Timnah and he saw a young Philistine woman there. And he went to his mother and his father and told them, I have seen a young Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as a wife. Remember, these are the same people that he is supposed to be used to save the Israelites from. But again, he started to feed the desires of the flesh. He started to feed what his flesh wanted. He started to feed what his eyes had seen. And the Bible began to tell us in Judges 14:5, it told us that while Samson was traveling to Timnah with his mother and father, that Samson had came across a young lion, and he tore the lion into pieces because the power of the Lord rested upon him. And it says that he didn't make his mom and his dad aware. And later on, while traveling down that same road, he seen that same lion, and in the carcass of the lion, that there was wild honey, and he took a scoop of that wild honey and he ate it. And he later on shared it with his mother and his father. Again, he was not supposed to eat anything unclean. And the Bible tells us that he later married the Philistine woman that he went down to Timnah and seen. And he threw this big feast. And in those days, their feast included wine, drinking of wine. And he was a part of indulgent in those, in the feast. So the story went on and told us that he was later betrayed by his wife, and it later led to her and her father's death. And he turned around and married another Philistine woman named Delilah, who was the last straw that led him to destruction. She was bribed by the Philistines to basically tell to get down to the bottom of where the strength of Samson was coming from. And the Bible tells us how she was nagging him and nagging him and nagging him and nagging him. And he finally told her the source of his strength. And she turned around and betrayed him. And they said that his hair was cut off. And the moment that his hair was cut off, his strength was lifted from upon him. His strength was lifted upon him. Why? Because he took his eyes off what his true assignment was and was so focused on everything else. He was focused on all the wrong things. He turned to the very people who he was supposed to be saving his people from. What have God placed into your hands to do? But yet you're turning around and doing all the wrong things. The enemy is like a roaring lion seeking who to devour, who to bring destruction upon, who to swallow up. What gateway, what window are you opening to him to make him accessible to the gifting and the blessing that God has placed inside of you from birth? God has blessed some of us so much, but at times we allow sin and disobedience to overpower us. We allow the desire of the flesh to fill our eyes and our minds that we forget the true assignment that we're supposed to be on. My prayer is that in this season, that God will give us the grace to be sensitive, that God will give us the grace to be discerning, that God will give us the grace to stand firm, that God will give us the grace to not throw in the towel, to not allow sin to overtake us, but the grace to walk in total obedience and to walk into the calling of God upon each and every one of our lives, and to do the will of God instead of worrying about the wrong thing, instead of being a partaker of the wrong thing, instead of being a partaker of the things and the desires of the world. That God will give us the grace and the discipline in this season. Because again, there are consequences that lead to destruction. And those things that lead us to destruction are forms of sin, disobedience, and us turning deaf ears to God when he's speaking to us.